Hello and welcome to the IslesNation Podcast. I am Pete Truskowski, also known as at NY IslesNation. I'm joined today by Harris Peskin and Mike Rankiewski. How are you guys?
Doing good, Pete. Good to talk to you, Mike.
Yes, same here, guys. We got a lot to talk about, it seems like today.
Yep, absolutely. One of the busier days in recent times for the New York Islanders. Returned to practice after the All-Star break. John Tavares did score 2 goals yesterday in the All-Star game, but we won't really touch on that. Nice to see, but whatever. Doesn't really have an impact. But yeah, the team did return to practice, and we got two big pieces of news. We'll start it off with the on-ice news. The Islanders re-signed goaltender Thomas Greiss to a 3-year, $10 million contract, worth $3.3 million a year on average. I know Harris has a strong opinion on paying goalies and their worth in comparison to the market. Thinks goalies should be making minimum wage in some cases. So, Harris, we'll start with you. Reaction to the Thomas Greiss signing. Do you like it?
Well, $3.3 million a year is not terrible, so I can live with it. What I will say, but generally speaking, I have a strong opinion on this matter. I think that goalies in the National Hockey League are a dime a dozen. They put up very similar save percentages. Maybe there's some deviation. 10% from league average max is what you'll see. And you actually map that out to how many goals that you're going to see over the course of a year. It comes out to a very minimal number. As opposed to saving 916 shots out of 1,000, they save 926 shots out of 1,000. It's a difference of 10 goals out of 1,000. Then there's usually 2,500 shots taken in a year. So figured an extra 25 goals that they save. I mean, that's really long. It's not that much. When you really think about it, the impact that a goalie will have, the difference between a top tier goalie and a mid tier goalie, it's in some instances it could be negligible. But for the price that we're paying here, I think it's a pretty solid deal. We're not overpaying for one of the league's better goalies, as it would stand right now. Over the past 2 years, he's been up there in the top 5 in save percentage, and I think that it's certainly worth it. When you consider that Halak had been making something like 4.5, I think Garth learned his lesson about overpaying goalies. I think that generally speaking, it's a buyer's market for goaltenders because there's only one spot on one starting spot on the team for them, and most goalies aren't that far apart from each other in their save percentages. And like I said, at the end of the day, that's what you should be looking at, the amount of saves that they're making compared to the amount of shots they're taking. Or taking at them. So I think that good deal. Not too much money spent. It's on the lower end of contracts in the NHL. He makes fun of me because I was saying that they should be looking at guys to pay him around $1 or $2 million. Ideally, I think that's what you want to look at, but I'm not sure that it's feasible. Just because even some of the bad, like I wouldn't say bad goalies, but a goalie like, I don't know, Greiss is making 1.5, but if you look at a goalie like Brian Elliott, he's still making 2.5. He's a starter. Martin Jones 3. So James Reimer's making 3.4. So I think it's it's on the lower end of the goalies for certain. Most goalies in the NHL, 15 highest paid above or above 5.6. So I think it's definitely on the lower end of payment, getting a top tier goalie for it. Good job, Garth.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with a lot with what Harris said about goalies overall, their value and contracts, and you shouldn't really break the bank on them. But yeah, I think overall this is a very fair deal. $10 million over 3 years is less than I thought it would actually take. But as Harris mentioned, it's a buyer's market. There's only so many goalie positions to go around, and it seems like there's a surplus of quality goaltending in the league. And to be quite honest, I think with a proper system, a defensive system, I think you can make most any goalie a very serviceable goalie for, as Harris said, not a lot of money. So, but Thomas Greiss has played very well here the last year and a half. I think it gives the team some stability over the next several seasons as they maybe bring in some of their prospects from overseas to see if they'll finally come here and maybe be able to take on the starter role. I think after last season, people were on the fence with Greiss as far as is he a did he just have one good stretch, or is he really this good of a goaltender? And I think he's proven over the first half plus of the year, he's a very quality goaltender. He's not an elite goaltender, but I don't think you need an elite goaltender to win in this league. I think it's been proven over the last decade
You definitely
of
don't.
play.
Niemi has won. Crawford wasn't elite when he won.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan Quick won in a year that he had like a very average save percentage. I mean, these are goaltenders that now might be thought of as elite, but to be honest with you, the real true elite goaltender is the one that are consistently around 925 to 930. Henrik Lundqvist, Carey Price.
Yeah, and those guys, I mean, again,
Haven't won, so
yeah, there's different ways to build a team, and I think allocating less money to the goaltender spot is a good way to do it. So yeah, I think overall it's a good deal. I'm very happy we get to keep Thomas Greiss and his beautiful wife in our organization for the next several seasons. And I think what it's also good too, because it was only for 3 and change. I think people who are worried about the cap issues in the future, beginning next year with some of these big contract extensions the Islanders signed, it's I think a very fair deal. I think it alleviates some of that. And after the Cal Clutterbuck and Casey Zizekas contracts, it was nice to actually see the team get a good deal here as opposed to kind of getting raked over the coals. So I liked it. I'm sure Pete does as well, but I'm curious to hear his thoughts.
Yeah, well, I do like the contract a lot. I have a differing view than you guys. Maybe because you guys are older, you have a short-term memory loss. You might forget the 2013-14
I
season.
don't forget the 2013-14 season.
Where Evgeny Nabokov and Kevin Poulin and Anders Nielsen combined for like an 898 save percentage, and the team never had a chance. So I think you guys are a little underestimating goaltending just a little bit there. But I mean, yeah, Thomas Greiss in his time here with the Islanders, I think he's over 920 save percentage, under a 2.5 goals against average. So while he's been an Islander, he's been one of the better goalies in the league. One could argue, if you look at his numbers this year, he's borderline elite. I believe he's top 5 in save percentage. He has a winning record on a not very good hockey team up until the past few weeks. So yeah, I do like the contract. Mike touched on it. Thomas Greiss was a career backup before he got to the Islanders. I was just wondering if that was anything of a concern with you guys with this contract. I mean, he has proven over the past year and a half that he can play at this level, at a very high level. But I mean, he's never, up until the second half of this year, once Halak got waived, he's never played the majority of the games in the season. So I was wondering if that was a concern for you guys moving forward with him as the number 1 goalie. If you think we're going to need a backup like Michael Neuvirth, there's someone that could split time and play 30, 35 games.
Well,
Because then you're signing another guy for $2 to $3 million, which I mean makes the goaltending around $7 million, which is higher than it was this year with Halak and Greiss.
I don't think I have less concern now with Thomas Greiss and his ability to kind of be the number 1 guy. And I think how hockey is these days, you need essentially 2 goaltenders who could play a fair amount of games. Most teams have one guy who plays 50 or 55 games and another goalie who plays between 25 to 27 games. I don't think that's anything unreasonable. I don't think asking Thomas Greiss to play 55 games in a season is going to all of a sudden lead to him diminishing his play. So I have less concerns with that, especially after the last year and a half. I think he's proven himself, and for some reason, if he turns out to be a bust with the contract, it's not a killer of a contract where you can't go out and bring in somebody else for reasonable money and still not be in a really bad cap spot with your goaltending situation. So listen, Thomas Greiss has never been paid more in his career than he will be over the next 3 seasons. So for him, it was a big step up in salary. I think for the Islanders, they got a very fair, reasonable deal. And as Harris mentioned, I think with the hockey today with goaltenders, you can't expect really even a quality backup to go for less than $2 million now. So the fact you got a starter for a little more than 3, I think is very reasonable. And I personally don't have any concerns. But again, for some reason he does go bust, I think you do have flexibility financially that you could go out and bring in another type of maybe backup slash 1B type of starter.
Yeah, there's no doubt that at the end of the day, Garth is given himself some flexibility here. He now has time to mold Sorokin if he ever comes over, when he comes over into an NHL goaltender. It's not a long-term deal. I would imagine that the next move here is, and this is the interesting part here, what they do with Yarrow. I don't think they're going to let him sit in Bridgeport and soak up that, what is it, 4.5 minus 100K. I guess it would be a $3.6 million cap hit for next season. I would think that they're going to they're going to expose him in the expansion draft. Well, obviously they're going to expose him in the expansion draft. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if he was claimed by Las Vegas. Remember, Las Vegas still has to hit the cap floor. So that's a consideration that's taken into account. I mean, I think that there's two goalies that are going to be left open: Marc-Andre Fleury and Yaroslav Halak. Although, do you guys happen to know? I don't know the Marc-Andre Fleury contract's status off the top of my head.
I think it's
No, Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be automatically protected. He has a no-move clause. If Pittsburgh does not, Matt Murray will be available.
Well, no, unless Pittsburgh, unless Fleury waives it. I mean, obviously he could still waive it, which is very possible. And if he sees the writing on the wall that
how old is Murray? Out of curiosity.
Murray, I was just gonna guess. I don't know. Maybe Pete has it in front of him.
Because if he was under a certain age, then the 2-year requirement may not apply to him. He might be protected automatically. He might not be in Pollock's situation.
But I will say
Matt Murray is 22 years old.
Harris, I disagree with you about Halak getting claimed, though. I think, and while I do understand that they have to hit a minimum amount of salary, I also think that they're going to use that cap space similar to what the Islanders did a few years ago as an asset to trade either minimal or take on either going to be able to take on another team's Nick Leddy or Johnny Boychuk type of deals where they're trying to save some salary space. Or,
save calories, yeah.
Yes, or the calories, right? Or obviously they will take a bad contract on, but they also want a first-round pick or something attached to it, and they can build that way. So
there's no doubt that they'll look at that. I would 100% agree with you.
Just to interject, Matt Murray is 22 years old. This is his third pro season, so just like Ryan Pulock, he will be available.
Yeah, it's tough. If Matt Murray's going to be again, Matt Murray is not going to be making much money anyway, so maybe they could just have both. But at the end of the day, I agree with Mike. I think they'll look to capitalize on their cap situation. I don't think that just by drafting these 30-odd players that they're going to have, they're going to hit that floor. I think they probably might need to take on some additional cap, whether that comes in shrewd trades or they just intentionally. Something to bear in mind, by the way, Mike, also is that in the past, I think it starts on March 1st, but in the past, in the 1970s, when there was expansion drafts, the people that would be expanding, the new teams that were being brought into the league would actually make trades with teams to not take certain players or to take certain players. So it's not beyond the realm of comprehension that Garth could actually swing a trade for them to take Yaroslav Halak. Like, that can happen. That has happened in the past.
I wish they would do that for either Cal Clutterbuck or Casey Cizikas.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
That'd be the better. If you're going to go that route, that'd be the better value. I mean, I can live with Halak for one more year, making $4.5 million, or even better yet, making 3.6.
You could also buy Halak out at 1.5 million for next year and the year after that.
There's no reason to buy him out for 1.5 though.
Next year's not the year where they're in trouble, as far as potentially. It's the year after where, if they are to re-sign Tavares and if they are to possibly add in some other additional players, that the 18-19 season would be where they would first, I think, run into cap issues.
Well, no, they're in trouble next year with cap issues too. But the issue really is once they sign Tavares, and they're going to have a whole bunch of people coming off the cap in there. They're going to have Kuhlman off the cap, Bailey off the cap, Grabowski off the cap.
Right.
Halak's going to be off the cap. There's going to be a lot of money off the cap, but the point is, though, that they're also going to have a lot of people to re-sign, and the question will obviously be, do they want to re-sign them? DeHaan's going to get a bump in salary, although Pete hates him. He's going to go for around 4. Hickey will also go for around 4. That's an additional $2 million right there. Nelson will get bumps.
You can't
keep all those guys.
You're not going to keep Hickey and DeHaan. You're going to keep one or the other. I'd personally keep DeHaan, but I don't think you're keeping both those guys. Not when you have.
And honestly, on this topic, I think Pellick has played himself into contention for a permanent roster spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why you don't pay Hickey or Dahan, or that's why you aggressively shop Hamonic for a forward.
Yeah, I agree. Although I think that there's still a need for a right-handed defenseman. I don't want him. I think that I love Travis. I think he's a great guy, but at this point, I think that his value is overstated, and he probably is worth a lot more in a trade to bring back. But we're way off topic right now.
That's okay. That's what we're supposed to do.
I'd just like to add another option with Halak. The Islanders can retain salary for next year. A team could look, if the Islanders decide to retain $2 million, I believe they're allowed to retain up to 50%.
Yeah.
So say they retain $2.25 million. For 1 year, they save cap hit. They save what, $1.5 million just by doing that, rather than burying him in the minors. And to another team, Halak could look attractive at $2.25 million. So that's another option you got to throw out there.
Do they retain a cap hit or do they not?
They can. Yeah, they can.
I mean, no, they retain the salary. Do they retain the cap hit?
Yes. I believe so.
Yeah, how it works is when you retain the salary, you also retain their cap hit.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a good idea. I think you save money that way. At the end of the day, the goal is here to clear as much cap space as possible. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. But we're looking into the distant future now. So let's go back.
Opens it up for sure. We got a lot more flexibility. I would 100% agree.
I think we're looking a little too far into the future right now because look at the standings, man. The Islanders are 5 points out of a playoff spot with 3 games in hand, and they've won, I believe there's something like 9-3-3 in their last 15 games, 4-0-1 in their last 5. New coach Doug Waite has them playing a fun, exciting brand of hockey. Are we getting a little ahead of ourselves here, or the playoffs a realistic thing to look forward to here down the stretch? What do you guys think?
Mike, you first.
They're relevant, which is, for years we obviously watched the team by December 1st be completely out of it, 15 games out of a playoff spot, and for a while it looked like this team was going to be on the same track. But to their credit, as you said, Pete, the last 15 games they played much better. The immediate history with Waite being there, they're 5-0-1 or 4-0-1, so they've played a much better brand of hockey, and it's just.
It's exciting, is what I would say.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
It's fun again. It's the first half of the season was just, it was apathy set in for a lot of fans, including myself. And it was just between the summer of inaction, the beginning of the year where the team just looked flat. They were playing a very bland style of hockey. It wasn't exciting. You didn't look forward to game day. I used to religiously, I'd DVR every game, and I would avoid social media until I got home from work, and everyone was quiet in the house. I'd watch the game, and I'd finish watching at midnight or 11 o'clock at night, and then I'd go on Twitter and everything else and give my reaction. And this season I found myself, I was listening a little bit on the car ride home, which not to get too off topic, but the Islanders could not have a worse duo broadcasting their games. And I know Chris King's
it's actually embarrassing.
I know Chris King is a big fan of the team, and I give him a lot of credit. He has a lot of passion. He's not, he's pretty bad. Picker's bad. My biggest pet peeve with them is in between whistles, where there's a set amount of time. It's usually like 18 to 25 seconds before the next puck is dropped, or it's supposed to be. They'll go on for a story for about 45 seconds to a minute. While the play's going on, it's like they have to cram in every fact and every little story they heard about, every little thing that ever happened. And there'll be times where you'll go complete between whistles without them even telling you what happened during the play. I don't know how many times I want to drive off the Bell Parkway when I hear them. But beyond that, they're exciting.
That's a pretty scathing indictment.
They're relevant now, and I don't know if they're going to get into the playoffs. They have a lot of road games coming up the second half of the season. They haven't played well on the road overall yet this year, but at least it's fun. It's exciting. They're in the mix. There's a lot of teams in there, and if they can make maybe 1 or 2 trades, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, I think they can. I think they can definitely be in a good position for that second wild card.
Yeah, I think that I'll follow up. I think that just I think they're exciting, and that's the most important thing because at the end of the day, this should be fun. And you know, we're all pretty big fans here, but you say something very important. It kind of brings up a little bit of a memory for me, Mike, but I don't listen to games on the radio. I make sure that I sit down in front of a television and watch the game. And if I can, I'm going to the game. But I found myself listening to more and more games this year because I'd just be on the road and I wouldn't have, I wouldn't make it a priority. And that it's actually pretty sad. Like that's not how I want to feel. I felt bad about doing that kind of stuff. So I'm happy now. I'm happy. I'm excited. This is better than what we were doing. Am I sure that we're going to make the playoffs? No. I think we're tangibly better under Doug Wade, but I think it might be a little bit too late. And that's just the way it is sometimes. And hopefully we learn, or hopefully Garth has learned his lesson. And that's what it is.
Yeah.
We can't really do anything else. At the end of the day, I think we're playing a more exciting brand of hockey. Our skilled players are playing like skilled players. Letty has an increased Corsi, JT, Bailey. And listen, I know you guys hate Josh Bailey, but I'm going to just say this on record right now. Josh Bailey's having a phenomenal season. An absolutely phenomenal season. He's on pace for 58 points right now. Every single game that he's been playing under Doug Wade, he's been a positive Corsi. I think in 4 of the 5 games or something like that, he's above a 70% Corsi. The guy is unstoppable right now. And you're going to say it's because he's playing with JT, and that's fine, but I'm going to tell you right now, I would not break up that top line. They look phenomenal. They look incredible.
I mean, Josh Bailey has been better this year. I'll give him that. I don't think he is a long-term option on the top line. We've discussed this ad nauseum off the air. I don't think we're going to get into that much here, but I mean, up until the last couple of weeks where John Tavares has really picked up his game, John Tavares is on pace for his worst year since his rookie year. And I mean, John Tavares always
he's now pacing though. He's now pacing for one of his better years, above 1.03 points per game in the past month or so, or something like that.
Yeah, but he's on pace for 70 points roughly, John Tavares. So that basically put him.
Yeah, that's for the whole year though.
That put him in line with what he did last year.
But if you look at the past month, he's on pace for something like 90, which would be his highest.
Right. No, absolutely. But you also probably figure he's in his best season he's had. It was 86 points.
86. Yeah.
So to expect him to continue a 90-plus point pace for the next 35 to 40 games, it's probably not realistic. But hey, listen, I hope he does. And with Josh Bailey, again, not to get too much into it, he's having his best season of his career. That to me, that's still he leaves a lot.
Summer school right there.
Yeah, he still leaves a lot to be desired, but again, he's played better, especially lately. The team has played better. But not to get too far in the future, but I am going to do it anyway. He's a guy that if as you mentioned, it's 1 year after the season left on his contract, and I'm not re-signing him, or if you're going to re-sign him, which I don't think they will, but who knows. If you're going to pay him a lot of money, then you have to anchor him to that top line with Tavares, because I think it's proven that he's not going to be a big-time point producer on other lines. And I don't think you could pay a guy $5 million plus to be a 35 to 40 point player, a middle six guy. That's my opinion. I'm sure you'll disagree, which is fine. But that's a contract. I'm already dreading it right now if it happens.
I think. Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
The Islanders have already proven that they're not willing to hand out those type of contracts to players they feel like they need to put John Tavares with. Case in point, Matt Molson, P.A. Parento the first time around. They feel, from what I see and gather, they feel like it's not worth it to pay someone that they feel they need to anchor Tavares. But Josh Bailey is the first darling of Garth Snow's rebuild. We don't even know if Garth Snow will be around to make the decision whether or not to sign him. But I feel like there's a bit of a different mindset with Bailey. I'm actually the opposite of that. I would be shocked if he's not re-signed as long as Garth Snow is here. But if Garth Snow's gone, then it's a totally different ballgame. But I mean, from what I gather, the Islanders in recent past have not really paid someone they feel they need to anchor with Tavares. They let Molson go. They let Parento go. I mean, Poso did play on other lines and did produce, but I mean, there was also a feeling there that he wasn't as good of a player without John Tavares. then again, who would be? But I mean, letting Kyle Poso go is a mistake. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So I'm not going to use that to defend my argument.
Josh Bailey has outproduced Kyle Poso next to John Tavares.
I don't know. It might be accurate from purely number standpoint, but I don't feel like John Tavares has been as dominating a force all year as he usually would be with Kyle Poso. That's just my eyes. I know you're going to throw numbers at me, but
yeah, I'm not going to. I mean, if you want to look at the numbers, you can look them up yourself. I'm not going to throw numbers at you, but like I can tell you that I think Josh Bailey has done a great job. I think for $3.3 million a year, which is what he's getting paid right now, on pace for 58 points. I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Even if he was only putting up his usual 40 points. You know what? I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat too. $3.3 million for 40 points. Second line player, $3.3 million. Not that bad. You know, we're paying Kuhlman. I'm sorry?
Go ahead. Kuhlman's terrible contract. You don't have to break that down for us. But let me ask you. If you take Josh Bailey off John Tavares' line, do you think John Tavares will suffer a drastic drop in his points?
Who are you putting on his line?
Let's just say instead of Josh Bailey and Anders Lee, you have Ryan Strome and Anders Lee.
Well, do I think John Tavares will suffer if Ryan Strome, who hasn't put up more than like 25 points in the past 2 years, is going to be put in his line? I don't think Ryan Strome has done anything more than Josh Bailey to deserve a spot on that line. So yeah, I actually do think his point. If we're talking about Ryan Strome from 2014-15, no, I think he'll probably be better. But if we're talking about Ryan Strome for the past 2 years, absolutely, Ryan Strome has been trash the past 2 years.
I disagree. I feel like John Tavares would still put up his points. That brings me to my next. It was a two-part question. If you take Josh Bailey off John Tavares' line, is Josh Bailey anywhere close to what he's shown, or is he back to that 35, 40-point guy we've come to know and love?
Well, 30, I think he's still putting up
35, 40 points.
I think he's still putting up a career year, regardless. I'm not sure that's all attributable to John Tavares, but even if he is going to be a 40-point guy, 40-point player, which is fine, he's making $3.3 million a year. That's pretty damn good. Like, you don't get $3.3 million contracts for 40-point players. It's pretty unheard of, unless they're on an ELC, and he's not.
I mean, you also got to expect to give him a raise. I don't feel like Josh Bailey is a player I feel comfortable paying $5 million a year.
Going forward, I don't disagree with you. I think that you're probably right at this point. If he's going to make $5 million, you're not going to pay him $5 million. Very simple. But I'm talking about the here and now. People have, I'm just going to say they've shit on Josh Bailey for the past several years. I don't think it's been deserved. I think that he's been a fine player, to be honest. I think that at times it's just a reflection of them being upset because he didn't meet expectations. And, it's an unfortunate, it's just unfortunate how that all turned out, I would say. Well, that's all I'll say on that.
And one of our friends, James Duffy, did do the research. That draft year was not a good draft year. So, you can't even really get mad at the Islanders for taking Josh Bailey where they did. You look
everyone wants to draft Filatov, if you remember. Who the hell is Nikita Filatov now, right?
Filatov, Luke Shen, those are the guys that Islander fans wanted, and we passed on them. And there's no argument Josh Bailey has had a much better career than either of them. So, you want to kill Garth Snow for that pick? You really can't. You passed on Erik Karlsson, but Erik Karlsson was not projected to go in the top 10. There are players like that in every draft.
Like saying you should have passed on, shouldn't have passed on Pavel Datsyuk in 2003 or something like that when he went in the 7th round.
It's a little different, but at the same time, like I said, I'm not going to kill Garth for that. I don't even hate Josh Bailey that much. I just think that he's a very vanilla player. I would argue, replaceable. If you insert Matt Barzal on an entry-level contract on that line, I feel like production would not dip. I know you're probably going to argue that too.
50 points in his first year. 58 points in his first year. I don't think so.
Well, I always said I had a thing with Josh Bailey was, in baseball you have WAR, wins above replacement, and it's about replacement level players. It's WAB, wins above Bailey. The replacement player. He's a very as Pete said, he's a vanilla player. Listen, he's had his best season of his career this season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he hasn't. And at times he's played well. I do think he gets a big boost from playing on the top line, like many players would. at this point, it doesn't seem like they're going to break up that top line. And if the team continues to play well, while I think he's not a first line player, I think it'd be foolish to break up that top line if everything else is going well. But I also thought for the longest time, as Pete mentioned, that when John Tavares was having his worst season of his career, that it was time to break up that top line, despite what other people were doing, because there. I don't care anything else. You have to make sure your top player, your franchise guy, is producing. And if he's producing, then all is well. And if he's not producing, I don't care that Josh Bailey, Anders Lee, or anyone else you put on that top line was having career seasons. It doesn't matter. You basically you get your franchise player going in the right direction, get him comfortable, and everything else you slot around him. And if that means other guys are kind of moved around and kind of have to get inconvenienced on having their best season, then so be it. The franchise is about John Tavares, not anyone else.
I don't think anyone would disagree with you for what it's worth.
I'm looking it up now, but I mean, it's no surprise. I'm looking at his game log, John Tavares' game log. The guy's been putting up like 2 points a night for the last few weeks, and it's no surprise that it correlates directly with the Islanders' recent run. I mean,
Of course.
The Metro, he put up 2 points against the Habs, 2 points against the Jackets, nothing against the Flyers, 2 points against the Kings, 2 points against the Stars, nothing against the Bruins, 2 points against the Hurricanes, 3 points against the Panthers when he really broke out. So that's 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. 13 points in his last 6, 7, 8 games. So, yeah, right around 2 points a game. The Islanders have lost one game in regulation in that time. So, I mean, it's no surprise. As Pac alluded to, how John Tavares goes, this team goes. And for a long time, there was an argument to be made that Josh Bailey was not maximizing John Tavares. And don't get me wrong, the way Tavares is playing now, there's no debate. You cannot break up that top line. They've been dominant under Doug Weight, who, I mean, most skilled players on this team have shown tremendous improvement under Doug Weight, and to me, it's no surprise. So that leads me more to my next point. Difference between Doug Weight and Jack Capuano. Is it smoke and mirrors, just the adrenaline of having a new coach, or is Doug Weight just a much better coach than Jack Capuano?
Well, I think Andrew Ladd made a comment after the last game that they're not just dumping pucks in anymore. And if you watch the game the last 2 weeks, you've seen that they've made a much more concerted effort to essentially skate into the offensive zone with the puck and not allow opposing teams to skate all the way basically to the slot with the puck in their defensive zone. And it's no surprise the Islanders have played a much more up-tempo game since that point. They seem to be a lot more dangerous offensively. And they seem to be playing similar to what they did back in the early 14-15 season, where they kind of first started this run of being a playoff contender and doing some damage. So Capuano, I mean, we talked about him many times, and it's been written about. He played the last year and a half. He played a very conservative style, and it absolutely did not suit the best of the best traits of this team, or should have been the best traits of this team. Over the last 2 weeks with Doug Weight involved, they've just become, as Harris said, as Peter said, they're much more fun to watch. It's much more exciting. Is some of this due to a adrenaline that it's a new coach and everyone feels somewhat accountable for getting the other guy fired? I'm sure there's some of that. I don't expect them to obviously play at 800 winning percentage the rest of the season, but so there will be definitely a stretch where they don't play well. And listen, the Flyer game, they were completely dominated from start to finish for the most part, and no surprise they lost that game in overtime.
It's also the third game in 4 nights, and they were coming off back to back.
Yeah, well, so Philly was on the second of back to back as well that night, and which they had lost at home to New Jersey the night before. They lost like 4 or 5-1.
I thought that Philly was on a 5-day break.
They had their bye week right before the Devils game the night before, so
Yeah.
they were fresh but tired at the same time.
Yeah, so I think Doug Weight has his team playing a little more freewheeling. It definitely suits them better to be a little more creative offensively, and obviously for the fans, it's much more exciting to watch. I do expect they'll take a little bit of a step back over the next, several weeks, just because, again, they cannot win every game or get points in every game. But I think the style they're playing now, if they continue to play this way for the next 2.5 months, it'll keep them in the thick of that playoff race. And that's, as we said, that's what all we want as fans. We want relevancy, and right now we have relevancy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that relevancy is all I could have asked for after this terrible start to the season, to be completely honest with you. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with how they've gone about this change and how they've improved, and I hope that they can continue to make it exciting. That's really all I can ask for at this point. I think I know that we have our own chat we talk about all the time, and I'm the first one to lead the charge. Hey, we're gonna make the freaking playoffs, guys. We're gonna being positive is one thing, but then realizing that we put ourselves a bit of a disadvantage at the beginning of the season is another thing. And I think that we should be optimistic with how much how better we've played lately. Absolutely, but at the same time, we should be a little bit. I think we should be a little. We should taper the expectations a little bit, just by thinking about the fact that there probably is a bit of an adrenaline boost right now. A lot of people probably feel very responsible for what had happened with Jack Capuano. I'm sure that they were friendly with Jack. I'm sure that there was a relationship there that they feel like they let him down. And to be honest with you, I don't think that anyone would think that this goes entirely on the coach. I mean, Yaroslav Halak playing at the level that he played at is not Jack's fault. As much as we'd like to blame him for everything and more, we can't blame him for that kind of stuff. So
I mean, that's a good point by Harris. If you look back when this season's all said and done, if the Islanders missed the playoffs by 2 to 3 points, that 7-game run where they just right after Alan Walsh's comments about Halak and the 3-goalie situation, where it seemed like the Islanders just ran Halak out there to spite his agent, and Halak was giving them .890 save percentage, 3.5 goals against average a night. You're gonna look back at that, and that's
you can't chalk that up to Jack. It's not Jack's fault. I mean, Jack did a lot of things. He did poorly, and although I'm not entirely sure I believe the rhetoric that Andrew Ladd is spouting that they were dumping it in, because if you actually there's this guy, I can't remember his name right now. There's this guy that goes on Twitter all the time and starts with an M, and he talks about a bunch of advanced statistics. Islanders actually carry the puck in more than almost every other team.
Micah.
Yeah, Micah. Yeah. So they carry the puck in quite a lot, especially in the Jack. I think that a lot of the issue here is that they were not really in a position to carry the puck in. Or maybe, I think maybe that's more of a percentage of the overall carry-ins as opposed to a sheer quantitative number. Or I would say more aptly, the problem is that they don't really know how to get the puck out of the defensive zone. They don't have a breakout strategy. They don't stand people up at the line. And when they're in the offensive zone, although they might carry the puck in sometimes. And this is something that you notice, and I know that this is going to seem like heresy, like I shouldn't be saying this, the sacrilege, but like John Tavares, when he plays on 3-on-3, you just notice that he doesn't have that same creativity that some other elite players have, the ability to keep the puck in the zone. That ability is the ability to just keep players on the defensive the entire time, just handling the puck alone, just possessing it the entire time, where the other team really can't do anything but play man-to-man, and they're not really going to get the puck until there's a shot on net. He doesn't really have that ability. He's constantly forcing things, or he just doesn't have that swiftness or that creativeness. He's an in-between kind of guy where he just tries to make a move on a guy, but he can't really play to the perimeter, just from what I've noticed. And if you actually look at the possession in 3-on-3s, it's heavily tilted against us. So I guess where I was going with this is once we're in the offensive zone, we don't really have that much creativity or quickness with the puck. We're not able to move it very quickly. You play an aggressive style on the Islanders on defense, you're able to force the puck out very quickly. And that's oftentimes what we see in 3-on-3. There's a difference between seeing a guy like Erik Karlsson keep the puck in the offensive zone and watching a guy like John Tavares. I know that one's a defenseman and one's a forward, but in 3-on-3 especially, it shows Karlsson could just maneuver and I guess weave his way in and out of people. He could reset behind the blue line if he wants to. But Tavares is trying to force it all the time. You saw it in that overtime game against the Flyers. He threw a puck into defenseman's stick. I think it might have even been Strite's stick in front of the net. He was trying to force a pass instead of just playing it safe, waiting for people to change. Maybe looking for an opening. Needless, turnover and in overtime and 3-on-3, everything counts when you turn the puck over. You're probably not going to have the puck in your stick for another minute because that other team's going to possess in the offensive zone for that entire time. Anyway, that's my takeaway.
I mean, yeah, definitely John Tavares does struggle on 3-on-3. I mean, but the thing is, he is arguably one of, if not the only player on the Islanders outside of maybe Nick Leddy with game-breaking ability up front. So, I mean, you got to keep putting him out there because he's your best chance to win. So it's a catch-22. He's not very good at it, but he's also your best chance to win. So, I mean, can't get on anyone for that. It's just this team's not built for 3-on-3. It's not built for shootouts, and that shows. I think we're like 3-9 or 3-10 in overtimes this year. So, I mean, those points, the Halak points, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken whistle, but all these points add up and could be the difference between
Absolutely.
not making. I mean, even I think this team's been in 3 shootouts this year, 3 or 4 shootouts. I think they've won one of them, and that was like a 15-rounder against the Ducks. You got rid of Franz Nielsen and Kyle Posto. Not only are they great hockey players, but they were the 1 and 2 in the shootout, and they were, I think, shooting over both around 40-50% in the shootout. So you get rid of those 2. I mean, that's potentially 2-3 points right there. So, I mean, just adds up and adds up. But, I mean, I want to be more optimistic here. The Islanders are 9th in the Eastern Conference in points per game. They have games in hand on everyone except the Maple Leafs.
We're going to the finals. That's all.
The Islanders get 1.09 points per game, and that includes their dreadful start. Over the past couple of weeks,
you have to wonder if it's sustainable, though. A lot of that is due in part to Greiss' great play. I mean, if he could sustain a .930, save percentage, that's one thing.
I understand, but the Islanders over the last 2 months have been playing well over 500 hockey. And you look, the Flyers are 5 points up on us with us having 3 games in hand. The Islanders play 500 hockey in the 3 games in hand. They're 2 points out. And they've been playing well over 500 hockey for 2 months now. So, I mean, there's definitely reason for optimism here, the way the team's playing. The fact, I mentioned this to Harris off the air as well, it seems like in the East, there's 7 teams that I would – 4 teams in the Metro, the Blue Jackets, Penguins, Capitals, and Rangers, I would consider locks, and obviously the Habs in the Atlantic. The Leafs are 1 point behind the Bruins with 6 games in hand, and the Senators. So I would consider those 7 teams locks. Habs, Leafs, Senators, Rangers, Blue Jackets, Penguins, Capitals. That leaves 1 spot wide open. And the thing is with those 5 teams, the Capitals, the Rangers, the Penguins, Blue Jackets, and the Habs, I don't know if I listed all 5 or if I said a team twice, but you get what I'm saying. Those teams have so many points, and there's no bad teams in the East this year. I mean, the worst team in the East has 49 points. So a lot of the points are being eaten up by the top-end teams, and there's not any teams that are just giving away points like we had in the past with the Leafs and the Sabres. So that math to me means that it'll take a lower amount of points to get into the playoffs this year. If you look at the teams the Islanders are competing with, it's the Bruins, who have the Islanders have 5 games in hand on, and they're 5 points back of. The Flyers, they're 5 points back of 3 games in hand. I feel like the only other team that really scares me is the Lightning, who the Islanders have 3 games in hand on and are up a point on, I believe. And the Hurricanes scare me a little, but the Islanders are 2 points up on them with a game in hand.
Did you mention the Flyers? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Flyers are 5 points up on the Isles. The Isles have 3 games in hand.
Right, but that's the team that you're going to be competing with year long. That's the team.
That's like I said. Those are the 4. Those are the 4 teams that worry me. The Flyers, the Bruins, who don't really worry me because they played so many games. The Hurricanes, who don't have the goaltending to worry me, and the Lightning, who might have dug themselves too deep of a hole. But if there's a team that could turn around and go on a 10-0 run, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. So those are the 4 teams I think the Islanders are competing with. I mean, they're right there. So, I mean, I don't feel terrible about where the Islanders are at. And if you asked me to switch spots with any team in that bubble right there, the only one I would consider would be the Flyers.
Right.
The only thing I hate is just we have a ton of road games, and we have that was that 8 or 9 game road trip that goes from February to March, I think end of February to beginning of March, where I mean that's just a daunting task, and that's my only concern. I think they're playing very well. They're playing their best hockey of the season, And I agree with you, Pete. There's a lot of teams in the East that they're competing with that I'm not overly frightened of, but they haven't been a great road team this year, especially compared to last year. And
They haven't been a great team this year compared to
well,
last
yeah,
year.
true. No, that's true. That's fair. But I guess my big issue is just it's a lot of road games for a team that hasn't played well overall, and we still don't know if this recent surge in play is because of a stylistic change or is it just a temporary bump because everyone's kind of flying high with a new coach. And we'll know over the next 2-3 weeks what it is. But again, they're playing better hockey. They're relevant. It makes the next half of the season exciting at least. You have a reason to watch the games, and let's just hope they get enough. And there's still enough time where they can still add a piece or two and maybe make a run at this thing to get a wild card spot.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I don't really want to get too far into the trade deadline. It's still a month away.
We can do that next one. Let's talk about the bigger news, the one I'm excited about.
All right, yeah, we'll get right to it. If you're living under a rock, report came out today that Barclays Center did a presentation for some potential investors, and they showed the numbers, and they included the Islanders in the numbers up through the 2018-19 season, I believe. So 2 years after this year. And after that, they took the Islanders out, which led to an article in Bloomberg. The Islanders are done after 2018-19, that they're getting the boot from Barclays. A lot came out, potential return to the
Just to confirm, there's also been other people that are set off as sources that they're speculating that Barclays is going to opt out.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's definitely smoke there. The Islanders and Barclays are nearing the end of their partnership. So there's been reports that the Islanders owner John Ledecky has met with Mangano. He's outlined a plan to get the team back to Nassau Coliseum. There's also in the past been reports about Belmont, about building an arena right next to Citi Field. So, I mean, what do you guys make? I know our good friend Carrie, his first reaction to this, it's weird. We much prefer being on Long Island compared to Brooklyn.
So, Mike, I don't know. Mike, do you? I do, obviously, but.
Sorry. No, I don't want them to be. I don't think Nassau deserves them at this point. And it's not because of the fans. Obviously, there's a lot of great fans out there, and it's not because of people in Suffolk County or making their life miserable. It's more, I don't trust Nassau County or their local government. The person who's supposedly one of the politicians supposedly spearheading this initiative, Ed Mangano, will probably be in federal prison within the next year or two. So it's tough for me to really take much of what he says or has done over the last several years with there's much credibility behind it. And I still don't understand the concept of, from everything you read there, the new Nassau Coliseum will be a 13,000 seat arena. I've read different articles saying that maybe they can add an additional 2,000 or so seats. So let's say optimistically you have 15,000 seats there. You have 15.5 at Barclays. Barclays, we'll have more luxury boxes, more suites. The marketing opportunities will still be better in Brooklyn, even if the more passionate fans are in Long Island. So no, I'm not. And I know I'm talking to two guys who bleed Nassau Coliseum, and I don't hate the arena. It was fun to watch games there, but I have no sentimental value about them going back to Nassau County and playing at the old barn one more season or one more time. To me, that ship has sailed. There were numerous opportunities for the county and the town of Hempstead to get something done. They chose not to, which again, that's fine. I'm a firm believer that if you have an arena, and if public, you don't want to put public money towards it because it could be used better elsewhere in other areas of the municipality. I'm all for that. I don't think that's a bad or unreasonable reaction. But I don't think now, after everything that's happened over the past decade plus of essentially the local government officials stymieing the opportunity for even private investment to build the arena, now I don't think now's the time where the Islanders or any organization should be crawling back to Nassau County. Essentially, screw them. They had their chance, several chances, I should say. They opted not to do anything or opted not to do enough. So I'm not saying I have any great affinity for Barclays Center. I've been there. It's okay. It's nothing special to me, but I'd prefer Barclays over Nassau Coliseum. I prefer most other local options over Nassau Coliseum, to be quite honest.
So you went a little more in depth there than I expected. You did not feel a change in your passion or fandom once the
No.
team was broken?
I'm sorry, repeat the question. I jumped you. I'm sorry. Just repeat
Did
that.
you feel a change in your passion or loyalty to the team, or like what you felt as an Islander fan, like what you stood for when the team moved to Brooklyn?
No, to me personally, I didn't lose anything. And again, I'm not from Nassau County. I'm not from Long Island, so that perhaps that's the reason why. I would generally go to between like 5 to 7 games each year. Then a couple playoff games, when they got in there, I would try to get to. So I know for you guys who are more local, you would go to a lot more. I know Harris was traveling to and from school many times, was going to 30 plus games a year at the Coliseum. So that's awesome. And I know Pete was going a lot, especially when he was home from school. That's awesome. To me personally, I did not become any less of a fan or any less passionate because they moved from Nassau to Brooklyn. And to be quite honest, if they moved from Brooklyn to Queens, or if they moved Brooklyn to Suffolk, or if they moved from Brooklyn to somewhere else local, I'm not going to feel any less about the team. Again, maybe and I'm not trying to, this is not, me trying to like kind of, act like some old guy here, but maybe because I'm a little bit older than both of you, I just, the fact that they don't have the Coliseum doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me that much. I wasn't upset to see them leave, to be quite honest, because as long as they were staying in the area, I was happy. And if I didn't get to go to as many games, or they were more expensive to go to, then so be it. I was happy enough they were in the area.
You're killing me here, Mike.
And listen, I know who I'm talking to. I know you guys are, and I mean, you guys, you can explain it better, but I know you guys obviously have said several times that you lost a little something when they left Nassau Coliseum. And I'm not disparaging that. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't feel that way, or that's wrong. That's how you feel. That's awesome how you feel. I just didn't have that. And again, I don't know if it's because I'm a little bit older than you guys, or I'm not from Long Island, but that's just how I felt. But I'll let you guys explain your position.
Yeah, well,
more.
I don't know if it has anything to do with age. I know my father feels the same way, and he's been a season ticket holder going to X amount of games since 1972 when they opened it up, and we had the same seats in Nassau Coliseum since that inaugural year, 2017, 8, 10, 11. So I think in a little bit it was kind of like for me losing a second home. I knew everybody in my section. I knew the usher. We took pictures before we left. I even contemplated ripping the seats out of the thing and stealing them. To be honest with you, I called Ed Mangano's office 2 days in a row, asking him if I could get permission to do it. I told him I would pay him $1,000 for it, and amazingly he said no. But or they said no, and the Nassau Coliseum was going to have some stuff sold off in a different fashion. But honestly, it was like losing a family member a little bit. Is the best way I would describe it. Going back to Nassau Coliseum, I don't think would be permanent unless, and I'm just talking finances here, because I know that there's a lot of disagreement as to the finances. I think that people are a little bit confused about my position as to why it would be sensible to go back. Right now, the New York Islanders are paid $53.5 million each year, and that escalates on 1.5% each year to play in the Barclays Center, and they are given that lump sum of cash in exchange for the revenue streams available at the Barclays, which would be advertising. Well, there's numerous revenue streams, actually. They sell off regular season and preseason tickets that the Islanders don't take any money from that. Advertising, radio money, concessions, jerseys sold on site. So the Islanders don't make any of that money. Barclays basically said, we're going to take all that money until we get to $53.5 million, and then after $53.5 million, we'll have a separate revenue sharing agreement on that. To our knowledge, especially based off this Brodsky article that came out today, the Islanders have not been generating $53.5 million from those revenue streams in the aggregate. As a matter of fact, they've been falling far short of $53.5 million, which would lead you to believe that Barclays Center still has to pay out this lump sum, and they said that minus some operating expenses, which is understandable, they have to pay their service to do this operating stuff, and that obviously costs money. So the Islanders might not make $53.5 million a year. They might make something like $38 million a year after some wacky accounting. But whatever the case is, Brodsky says they're not even generating anything close to $53.5 million, and the Barclays isn't making money on this deal right now with the New York Islanders. And if that's the case, because of this wacky revenue split agreement, then it doesn't really make much sense for Barclays to keep the Islanders there, beyond the time that they have this ability to opt out. And if they're going to opt out, then they have to give them notice after the third year, and the Islanders will be gone after the fourth. That's plenty of time for them to go figure out a different arrangement. The question becomes, obviously, where do you move back to? What do you do? And I think what we've learned over time is that this franchise, although it has a passionate fan base, it has a small passionate fan base. It doesn't have enough passion or enough. You can't drive up these ticket sales. You can't drive up the concessions. They just don't make enough sales because there's not enough people to buy the stuff, or for whatever reason. But there's just not enough money there for them to make money unless they own the arena. The Islanders don't own the Barclays Center, and Barclays obviously is basically saying, "Hey, listen, New York Islanders. Obviously, the Islanders are doing this deal because they have to pay out. They have to pay out expenses. So let's say the Islanders have to pay out $70 million in salary next year. You put taxes onto that, FICA taxes, and you consider expenses they might have to pay, like travel, paying employees other than their 23 hockey players on staff, minor leagues team they might have to pay out. They have to pay out rent or maybe they have to pay out property taxes at offices they might have, or a practice arena that they might have, expenses for that kind of stuff. They're easily paying out over $200 million a year right now, easily. And if you think about how they're generating that revenue to even come close, they're probably not. Frankly, they're probably not. And it makes you think about how can this team stay afloat absent being able to earmark revenues from a separate source. And that was really the argument that was made by Charles Wong when he basically said word for word what I just said at all these town hall meetings from 2001 till 2008. There used to be all these town hall meetings. He opened his books to Newsday. He pled with Town of Hempstead to basically say, hey, listen, guys, it's impossible for me to make money unless I own the stadium and I own some of the surrounding land so I could, basically have my own ventures here. And I think that's what we're really drawing upon here. Barclays is recognizing that if they're going to have to pay out this money to the New York Islanders so the Islanders could field the team, the Islanders won't be able to make that money. And obviously Barclays isn't going to share any money that doesn't have anything to do with the Islanders, from sales to a concert like Kanye West or the Nets profit that the Islanders are going to get any of that. So there's just not enough money for the Islanders as an entity to survive on their own. The team needs to obviously have its own building, and that just isn't possible right now because there's no building for them to own. Likely they'll begin looking to explore buildings in Queens or in Belmont. I'm not confident that there'll be a building deal done there. I think what's more interesting is a possible revenue share agreement as it relates to revenues from the Nassau Coliseum generated, in any sense. In other words, let's say that there's a Billy Joel concert there. If the New York Islanders have some sort of a partnership agreement with, the Barclays Center at Nassau Coliseum, where they have some equity or some right to the revenues derived from all sales at that Coliseum, then we're talking about being able to, come out in the black here as opposed to in the red. The question really is, would Barclays have an interest in doing that sort of thing in lieu of paying them the $53.5 million? What they gain is the Islanders probably don't go out and look for a separate building to build on their own, which would compete with not only Nassau Coliseum and probably drive it into non-existence because of the existence of public transportation, but they also don't compete with the Barclays. So it's a really complicated thing here, but I think that, we'll see how this all unfolds. I would be very surprised if there wasn't a renegotiation at the least. I think that the Barclays will probably trigger the opt-out, and the Islanders will if I get to guess, will probably end up playing somewhere else in 2019.
Yeah, that's a big point by Harris there, the last one. I mean, you think about the New York area, you have just in arenas, Madison Square Garden, the Barclays Center, the Prudential Center in Newark, which is the tri-state area, the new Coliseum, and the Barclays Group owns two of those, obviously the Barclays Center and the new Nassau Coliseum. So if the Islanders were to get the boot from Barclays Center and decide they wanted to build their own arena, they would probably make a brand new state-of-the-art arena somewhere with public transportation, like Belmont or Queens. And that arena would then compete with the other arenas in the area for events, concerts, all that kind of stuff, and have a main tenant in the New York Islanders. And in turn, that would definitely make the new Coliseum defunct because no performer worth their money would go to a 13,000 arena in suburbia over 4 places with access to the city via public transportation, and it would compete directly with their big prize, the Barclays Center. So, I mean, Mike did mention the possibility. The Coliseum now is projected to have a little over 13,000 seats. They were considering adding retrofitting it to add 2,000 more seats to it. I mean, if the Islanders could work out an agreement with the Barclays people. I know Harris touched on it earlier offline. I don't know how feasible it is if the Islanders could buy the new Coliseum from the Barclays people. I don't know if that was just him spitballing or if there's something there.
Maybe there's no reason they couldn't. And the Barclays people, they're just like any other, in real estate, a lot of times you buy a property to sell it. You don't buy a property to keep it. You don't buy an asset to keep it. You buy a property to watch its value appreciate. And then when it's worth something else and you can make a substantial gain on it, you sell it. That's just like investing one-on-one. So I think that if the Nassau Coliseum came up for sale and the Islanders had an opportunity to buy it, I don't think Barclays would necessarily hesitate, especially if it means that they don't build a separate arena in Belmont to compete with the arena they have in the Barclays Center.
Let's just look at, you mentioned a couple times possibly building an arena. Prudential Center was built in October, was completed in October 2007 at a cost of $380 million. Right. You get Barclays Center, which was completed, I forgot the exact year, let's say like 5 years ago, roughly 4 years ago, was about $1 billion. So let's split the difference and say a new arena will probably be somewhere between between $500 and $600 million to build. Right. They've already spent $485 million on the team, and let's just say they spend $500 million plus on a new arena. You're talking $1 billion investment.
Sure.
As you said, yeah, they might turn around and try to flip it, but in order for anyone to make money with the Islanders and an arena, you're talking at least a 20. Let's say you want your plans to own it for 20 years, or new owners to own it for 20 years. You need $50 million in profit per year to make that investment worthwhile.
That's not the right way to look at it, though, because you're looking at it as in, if I hold this, when am I going to see if I hold on to this asset, when am I going to see my return on investment?
Well, no, I just
said
even if they were to sell it, but I'm saying even if Ledecky Malkin decided after 5 years, we built the new arena, we think the value of it is now worth $1.2 billion for argument's sake. I'm just making up a number there, and that's what we're gonna sell it for. So you sell it to a new investor for $1.2 billion, and he's gonna have to hold on to it for at least a couple of years for it to try to appreciate in value, and then hopefully flip it for $1.4 billion. To me, it's a very risky proposition in this area to build another arena to compete. Not just obviously, even if you have your anchor tenant for 41 nights a year plus preseason and playoffs, let's say 50 to 55 nights a year, you have the Islanders, at least 300 plus dates a year where you're competing with everyone else in the area for the same concerts. You might have to try to attract a minor league basketball team or something here. I guess honestly, and maybe someone who knows concert bookings better will tell me.
I can tell you anything you want to know about that. I dealt with it for a long time. I can tell you right now what's going to happen is those concerts will probably pay some sort of rent agreement with one of these stadiums, and they'll probably take some royalties and have some sort of revenue split. And I can tell you that the revenue split, depending on the terms of it, obviously these Coliseums undercutting one another to get the concert.
Right. So but I think the issue then becomes now you have essentially four arenas within a 30-mile radius or less than that competing for the same acts. They're going to be undercutting each other, and I think the profit margins are going to be that much smaller. And I think it makes it a tougher sell.
It's also the biggest area in the entire world.
Absolutely, but even now with three arenas, it's not exactly it's you still have these arenas aren't like Prudential Center. I know doesn't necessarily always get the best acts or sell out all the time very quickly. And I understand they're in New Jersey, they're in Newark, but they're literally a 20-minute train ride over from the Trade Center, so it's not like they're that far out of town.
It's also a pretty bad area. But I'll say this. I think that there's a lot of things that have to be considered here. We probably don't have the technical expertise to consider them. There's all kinds of tax issues that have to be considered in terms of depreciation, appreciation, all kinds of all kinds of subsidization issues that need to be considered here. I know that someone had mentioned that Andrew Cuomo obviously is a very high interest in the Belmont because of the gambling that goes on over there, and he might be trying to attract more revenues to the state. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of subsidy that was provided to, assist in the creation of the building.
Yeah, well,
bond of some sort with the state.
Any municipality could offer various tax breaks and incentives to have somebody build there. Obviously, what happens then is you have to deal with the public, and which is always an issue to say, well, especially if the economy is not booming, and people say, well, how can you turn around and go give these these guys with hundreds of millions of dollars all these subsidiaries? And there may be valid reasons to do so. You may say, well, we're creating jobs, we're going to bring in all this extra tax revenue, blah blah blah. But if you're your average Joe voter and you're just figuring, hey, he just gave away $200 million worth of tax breaks for them to build an arena, and it doesn't help me at all. Next election comes, if I'm the opposition, first thing I'm bringing up is, here's the guy who, or whether it's Cuomo or any politician, here's the local politician who gave away the candy store to the big bad company, and the money that could have went to your schools and to fund new municipal programs. Well, he gave that all away to the big guy down the block who's gonna turn a profit and then sell it in 5 years to make a bigger profit. So
interestingly enough, though, I think it's really bears mentioning that Katz, the president of Queens, I think she's the Queens County president or something like that. She's actually already floated the idea. There was a report that was done a couple of days ago that she mentioned the ability to host a soccer stadium and a hockey team. So an arena with with the ability to do both. I don't know how pragmatic that would be or what kind of complex she has in mind, but she's already bringing this idea up, and that tells me that where there's smoke, there's fire. I strongly believe that this is something that is going to be considered, and I do not see this issue going away. I think it's all but a matter of. I think the finances dictate at this point that Barclays Center is not viable for the New York Islanders in terms of being able to generate a profit. It just doesn't. No ifs, ands, or buts. They don't do well with the sales that they do there in terms of seats. There's a limitation. Islanders obviously don't bring in money from those revenue streams. Barclays obviously does bring in money from those revenue streams, but they operate in the red, which means that they're not going to want to. They're a business. They don't want to operate in the red. They're going to get out of the red if they can. So it tells me that this can only go on so long, and at some point they're going to opt out, and the Islanders are going to be left looking for some sort of arrangement here to find a place to play. I don't believe they're going out of state. I believe strongly that they will stay in state as long as possible, and we'll see where they go with from there.
I still think Belmont is the end game here. That is state-owned land, so it doesn't have to go through local municipalities or anything like that.
Right.
And obviously, you guys know I used to be a big-time gambler.
Not the distant past.
3 weeks clean now, but anyway. You look at the aqueducts in Queens. They have the Racino there, the computerized slots. That thing brings in over $70 million in revenue a month. If the Islanders could potentially get approval for something like that at Belmont, which Aqueduct is basically a partner with Belmont. I'm not sure if you guys know how horse racing works. They go to Aqueduct during the cold months, then they go to Belmont, then they go up to Saratoga. But anyway, if they get approval for something like that and Malkin or Ledecky can invest in that, that is a big-time moneymaker there, and that is a quick way for them to earn some of their investment back very quickly. I mean, like I just said, since it opened in 2012, they're averaging between $50 and $80 million a month in revenue. So, I mean,
if you're going to build something on state land, it's going to have to go through. There's obviously going to be very state permit and studies that have to be done. They're going to have to go through an RFQ process. They're going to have to go through and basically put a public.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, Mike, because my understanding was there was an RFP done.
Was there?
Several years ago, yeah. And there was an arena that was being contemplated to be built there, and it was canceled. I think that was the Cosmos Stadium or something like that.
But I guess the question is, did that RFP, did it expire? Sometimes they expire at a certain time.
Yeah, I'm sure it expired, and I'm sure they didn't have to go through it again. And again, it's a process. They have 4 years to do this. I mean, it's not, or they have a couple of years to do this. And like I said, there's no reason the Nassau Coliseum can't serve as an interim thing. I think the important thing here is that they're obviously dissatisfied with the Barclays Center. I think it's a stretch to believe that they're leaving the New York area. I strongly believe that they will not leave the New York area. And where does that leave you? That leaves you with them looking to go buy their own arena. They understand at this point that they can't be tenants in an arena, and they're not selling off to Quebec City, which is going to be owned by local interests. They're not going to be a tenant in that building that was built by the public. And, they're not going to Kansas City either. It's just, there's no market there. I just think that it's a far-fetched idea for them to even consider leaving at this point. They're not leaving. They're staying in New York. That means, what are the options in New York? There's 3 options: Nassau Coliseum, Belmont, Queens. I think Belmont is probably the most likely, given reasons that Pete's already spoken about.
Or you renegotiate Barclays and you make it.
Or you renegotiate Barclays, sure. But I mean, at the end of the day, unless they're getting some sort of revenue share from activities that aren't hockey related, it's not going to be profitable. I mean, that's all we've seen. I mean, right now, Barclays literally controls everything. Barclays controls, every revenue stream you could possibly imagine that has to do with the business, other than TV deal and other than the NBC rev share that comes from the league, which is $100 million a year divided by 30, or the the MSG deal, which is what I think it was, like last I heard, was like $30 million a year or something like that. But either way, it doesn't make the team profitable.
Yeah,
well, I don't have access to their books, but it doesn't sound like it would.
They'll get an expansion fee this year. I don't know what the exact number is, but this year at least they'll get an expansion fee with Las Vegas coming in, and probably within another 5 years they'll have another expansion fee.
But that's not something you depend upon for stability.
No, of course not. But it's in the short term, it can make, if they really are serious about moving the arena, or not moving, building a new arena, whether it's a partnership with Belmont or elsewhere, you can almost go into a year-to-year lease with Barclays after that, if they're willing to do so, because you do have some other revenue coming in temporary to at least offset any losses you may incur. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I agree. I don't think they're going to move away from New York. I don't think professional sport teams
don't move away from New York.
Yeah, you don't move away from this market. It does, even if it is saturated, it doesn't make any sense financially. You're not going to be make more money elsewhere. Maybe Belmont is the end game. I don't trust Nassau County with this stuff. We've seen it many times over. They're very slow to move. What they say in the public is not necessarily what they always come through with. And the last, for the way they've treated the Islanders the last 30 years with the arena issues, they had their opportunity. Now all of a sudden they're going to kind of bend over backwards to make it work. I'm not saying it can't happen. It's just all the evidence makes me believe that it won't happen in Nassau. But we'll see. I've been wrong before, so we'll see what happens.
No, I agree 100%. I feel like the thing is, in order for the owners, if they were to invest in a new arena, in order for them to make their money back, they would have to develop some land and make money from other revenue streams, which is why I bought the Belmont situation. I feel like that's their best hope, to get a development approved that would give them more than just an arena. I mean, there's nothing at the Coliseum. As we all know, it's very hard to get anything done there. I mean, Queens, you have Citi Field right there. I feel like there's not a lot of room there for anything other than an arena. So I feel like that leaves Belmont where, like I said, I brought up the casino. I mean, there's plenty of other options, whether it's a minor league soccer stadium, all these types of things that there is room there to build. There's 3 huge parking lots. So there's room there to build something that, because as Mike mentioned, the owners are going to have to make their investment back in some way. And it's going to be a long, slow, tedious process if they're just relying on the profits from the arena. So, I mean, I feel like they would be looking for somewhere where they could develop more land than just the arena. And in my opinion, Belmont's the best bet for that.
Absolutely agree.
Anything else to add, Mike, on anything?
No, I think listen, it's exciting. As we mentioned before, we got hockey starts up again. Islanders going to play a lot of hockey in a short amount of time, relatively speaking, because they have a lot of games to catch up with people. And, maybe we'll see a big trade. Maybe we'll see a Matt Duchene deal here before March 1st. And not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but that would be the avenue I'd look into or that'd be the route I look into, dangling Travis Hamonic as my main piece. But we'll see what happens. Again, it's better talking about this than talking about draft prospects and tanking for a top 5 pick and all that other stuff that we had too much experience with. At least now it's fun to watch hockey again. It's exciting, and hopefully they can do it for the next 2.5 months and then sneak into the playoffs. And you hope for the best. Obviously, they would be underdog no matter who they played in the first round. But weirder things have happened.
All right, let me ask you guys this question to wrap it up. The Islanders make the playoffs, get bounced in the first round, Garth Snow keeps his job, or the Islanders miss and Garth Snow gets fired. Pick one.
I have no vendetta against Garth Snow as long as he learns how to become a general manager and he reverts back to his ways in 2014-15. I'm more than happy to keep Garth Snow. History tells me that won't happen. He's made some really stupid moves, which I call into question, and I hope that he's learned from them, and going forward he doesn't make them again, because they really were just unfounded.
Such a lawyer answer. Answer the question. Knowing what you know about Garth Snow and how he's been the GM the last few years, pick one. Don't dance your way around.
Well, all right, fine. You know what? It doesn't making the playoffs and winning the round doesn't matter. So I'll let him go. The grand scheme of things, it doesn't make a difference.
What do you say?
It was lose first round, but keep Snow, or miss playoffs and fire Snow.
Yep.
Miss playoffs, fire Snow, because at least they'll be competitive till the end. They can keep it interesting, and then they can fire Snow the day after the season ends.
It's a tough one for me, but I do love myself some playoff hockey. So I mean,
we all do. I mean, it's. I don't think that. I think the one positive is I don't think those will be the 2 clear-cut answers. I think Snow is, unless they go on a really deep run, which I think we could all agree at this point would seem very far-fetched. I think Snow is. I think these are the last several months of Garth Snow's tenure here.
I agree.
At least my fingers are crossed that I hope I'm right.
Yeah, I sure hope the owners have the foresight to not let a miracle run get in the way of something that's been obvious for the better part of a few years now. So, I mean, they've done nothing to really earn our trust or lose our trust, so we can only hope. But
hey, if they go out and they make the playoffs and they go in the first round, they beat the Capitals in a thrilling 7-game series, then you know what? I would probably say, hey, Garth deserves another shot. But let's get there first. I hope that's a question we can talk about a few months from now.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Let's hope the Islanders keep playing the way they've been playing here the last few weeks. We really are enjoying this run. I mean, I know, like I said, a lot of us pretty much gave up on the season a few months ago, and now we're back. So hopefully they keep reeling us in all the way to a playoff spot in April. We'll be back before then, probably back before the trade deadline, see if the Islanders are in a position to buy or sell, I mean, that's another reason the next couple of weeks are huge. Trade deadline's coming up. The Islanders continue their run, they could be buyers. If they fall off a little bit, they could be sellers. So, I mean, a lot of hockey to watch the next few weeks, important games. So let's go Islanders, and have a good night.